Some people love Shakespeare, others not so much. But a Shakespeare adaptation is always a good time. Constellation Theater at 14th and T is featuring a musical called Desperate Measures. It's based off of Shakespeare's play Measure for Measure, but it's set in the Wild West. A gunslinging nun teams up with a sheriff and a saloon dancer to save her brother. Buy tickets now at constellationtheater.org. The show runs through March 17th. Once again, that's constellationtheater.org. Today on CityCast DC, the deal to move DC's sports teams, the Capitals and the Wizards, to Virginia is not looking good. Over the weekend, both Virginia Senate and House removed language about adding an arena to the state's budget, a move that Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin called a monumental mistake. So is this deal dead in the water? Michael Pope from Virginia Public Radio is here to explain where everything went wrong and if this plan still has a chance. Today's Tuesday, March 12th. I'm Bridget Todd, and here's what DC is talking about. So, Michael, we've covered the Virginia General Assembly session throughout the year, but they just keep pushing this big arena deal down the road. As of this weekend, both Virginia Senate and House removed language about adding an arena to the state's budget. My understanding is that it was Senator L. Louise Lucas who was really spearheading this effort. What exactly is going on with her? What's her deal here?
Yes, this is the very powerful chairwoman of the Senate Finance and Appropriations Committee. This is her first year as newly empowered chairwoman of Senate Finance, L. Louise Lucas from the Hampton Roads area. And, she used her first session in this very powerful position to exert her power and influence and reject the governor's proposed arena in Alexandria. And she was opposed to it the whole time. She kept telling people that it would never happen because she was opposed to it. And you could say that she was telegraphing it for the entire General Assembly session dating back to January, but I think that wouldn't quite be accurate because she was just flat out telling people, I'm a hard no, and I'm not going to change my position.
Was she a hard no because she was firmly against this deal? She thought it was a bad deal? Was she using this to negotiate? What's your sense of what's going on here?
So on the last day when it became apparent that this was not going to be in either the Senate budget or the House budget, I asked her about her opposition. And, throughout the session, she raised many objections. But sort of the top line, most important part was the debt. So using the full faith and credit of you, the taxpayer. That was a problem. This is a moral obligation that she did not think was appropriate for the Commonwealth of Virginia. And she also raised, over the course of the General Assembly session, raised other concerns that she would like to see the governor put his signature on a bill for retail sales of marijuana. The governor said he was not interested in that. L. Louise Lucas also wanted to see a raise in the minimum wage from $12 an hour to $15 an hour. The governor was very uninterested in raising the minimum wage. So there are a host of issues that she raised concerns about, chiefly the debt that Virginia would have as a result of the proposal.
So are there other levers that Youngkin could pull and make this deal happen?
There is a theoretical possibility that the governor could issue an amendment to the budget. The governor actually still plays a process in this. He gets to veto a bunch of bills. He gets to sign bills. He gets to amend bills. And the governor is a very powerful player in this. And he could have some kind of amendment that would bring the proposal back. He could also, at any moment, call for a special session so they could bring the lawmakers all back to Richmond and pass some kind of legislation during a special session on this. But you would not want to do that unless you change the mind of Senate Chairwoman L. Louise Lucas. And at this hour, that seems impossible.
So let's talk about that, because I understand that Youngkin vetoed a bunch of legislation over the weekend. What was some of that legislation? And do you have a sense of whether or not it was connected to this arena deal at all?
No, it was not connected to the arena deal. So, during the General Assembly session, there was a whole bunch of legislation, obviously, everything from guns and abortion to voting rights and regulating how tall your local government can have a blade of grass on the lawnmowers at your local county government and your local city government. They actually really regulate the length of the blade of grass. True story.
Wait, I thought you were joking.
Not a joke. The local governments in Virginia are forbidden from taking all kinds of actions unless the General Assembly says they can take action. So this whole infrastructure of committees that regulate cities and counties, and they basically tell the cities and counties what they can do and what they can't do, right down to the blade of grass. So there's a lot of stuff that had nothing to do with the arena that was happening during the General Assembly session, and there's a small pool of bills that are called the 7-day bills. This is because the governor has a deadline of 7 days to either sign them or amend them or veto them. So this small group of must take action now bills are bills that the governor made announcements over the weekend. So there were 8 vetoes, 12 amendments, and 64 bills that were signed. So the 8 vetoes include one that has to do with voting rights. So there's this group of states that collects data about voters and which voters have moved and which voters have died. It's called ERIC. This is a statewide compact of states. The Democrats really think this is a good government initiative. And so the Democrats were fighting for Virginia to rejoin this group of states called ERIC. The Republicans and Governor Youngkin, they don't like ERIC. They think it's some sort of problematic group. There are right-wing media outlets like the Gateway Pundit that have called attention to ERIC in a very negative way. So this has become a partisan issue. The governor vetoed Virginia rejoining ERIC. There's also this lingering issue of school boards that want to ban books. So there was a bill that prevented school boards from banning books in the future. The governor vetoed that. He is on the side of the school boards that want to ban books. And then also there was a gun bill that the governor vetoed, kind of a no-brainer, actually just keeping guns out of the hands of dangerous people. So there are 8 vetoes. He also made a bunch of amendments that the General Assembly members are going to have to consider when they come back into town. One on gay marriage, creating exemptions for people who have religious ideas against marrying gay people. So the governor signed a bill that says, yeah, gay marriage is legal, but you don't have to marry the gay couple if you have a religious problem with it. This is his amendment to it. A very similar one on contraception. Contraception has to be covered by healthcare plans unless you've got a problem with it, and then you don't have to do it. So these are the governor's amendments that the lawmakers will have to consider when they come back next month. And then he signed 64 bills, most of which didn't receive a lot of media attention because they're what's called agency bills. So like the agency might suggest a change to the law to make the agency run more efficiently. One big one the governor did sign, though, that is of note is banning legacy admissions to colleges and universities.
Oh.
So yeah, very significant action, actually, that the governor put his signature on that bill, banning legacy admissions to colleges and universities. A lot of stuff that actually had nothing to do with the arena, but the politics of the arenas, going back to that discussion, really did rope in some other things that were unrelated, most notably retail sales licenses to sell marijuana, and then the other one is raising the minimum wage.
So that's really helpful. I did get this sense, and you can let me know if this is accurate or not, that Youngkin was sort of, I don't want to say holding marijuana legislation hostage, but like that's the sense that I feel like people have. Is there any truth to that?
There was a sense of drama. I mean, this was a session that went on for almost 3 months. And so there was kind of this sense of drama that there might be a deal struck at the end of the session. I have to say, I was kind of doubtful the whole time because I can't imagine that Glenn Youngkin wants to be the governor that put a weed shop on every street corner, right? So like, this is just not his brand. It's not something he's interested in. Similarly with the raising the minimum wage, we're talking about the CEO of the Carlyle Group here, former CEO of the Carlyle Group. So he's not interested in raising the minimum wage either. So I always, this whole time, I sort of thought striking some sort of deal was going to be very difficult, if not impossible.
The brand new Arbor at Tacoma is built for your most convenient urban living. Whether you want to enjoy the vibrant Tacoma, DC community or comfortably retreat into a sleek sanctuary all your own. The kitchens have striking dark navy and white cabinets, and throughout the home, there are wood floors and smart home technology. Some homes even have a private outdoor space. With a quick walk to the metro, you can easily head into downtown or stay close and enjoy the retail that's on site. Located at 218 Cedar Street Northwest, the Arbor Tacoma offers brand new 1- and 2-bedroom condos starting in the upper 300,000s. Visit thearborattacoma.com for more information. That's Tacoma with a K, so TheArborattacoma.com. Let me ask you this, because we're talking a lot about Senator Eloise Lucas spearheading this effort, but how do other Dems in Virginia feel about this? Are they on her side? Is there a mix?
Worth pointing out that the legislation to create the authority that would own this facility and the entertainment district and the taxing authority and all that actually did pass the House. So it had bipartisan support, including significant support from House Democrats. That's on the House side. Also worth noting that the local delegation, for the most part, opposed the arena. So if you think about the actual delegate who represents the specific district where the arena would be located, she voted against the bill. The other members of the Alexandria delegation mostly voted against the bill, with one exception. House Majority Leader Charnel Herring, who's also in the Alexandria delegation, she supported it. So mainly opposition from the local delegation. That's on the House side. Then on the Senate side, they never voted on it. They never considered it. They never debated it because Eloise Lucas didn't put it on the agenda. It's interesting, the senators might have made public comments about it, and we might think we know where the senators are on it, but there was never a vote on the Senate side.
So we don't really know.
We don't really know about the senators. I mean, we know what Eloise Lucas thinks about it. She's been very vocal about it.
Right.
And some of the other senators, like this is a bill that was introduced by Senate Majority Leader Scott Suravel from Fairfax County. We know his opinion about it because it's his bill and he's spoken about it at length. And, there are senators who have been interviewed about it, but there was never a debate in the Senate and there was never a vote in the Senate.
If Youngkin is going to try to pull a Hail Mary here, are there any dates that we should be on the lookout for?
Yes, the reconvened session of the General Assembly. This is when the lawmakers come back to Richmond to reconvene. It's also sometimes called the veto session. It's in April. That is a significant date that you would want to watch to see if the governor has some sort of, for example, a budget amendment or some kind of proposal that might be considered at the last minute. And you can do all these kind of procedural things to make that happen. So when they come back into town for the reconvene session for the members of the General Assembly to consider all of these amendments, because, the General Assembly might reject or accept these amendments on gay marriage, for example, the religious exemption for gay marriage. The General Assembly will have to vote on that. The religious exemption for contraception in healthcare coverage. The members of the General Assembly are going to have to vote on that amendment. And so that's when they come back into town next month in April for the reconvene session. They could also theoretically overturn the vetoes, but you need a lot of votes. You need a supermajority for that. And the lawmakers are so narrowly divided that that's really kind of off the table. So I really doubt the General Assembly will be overturning any of his vetoes. It's a theoretical possibility when they come back. That is a date that you might think about. Theoretically, there might be a budget amendment on the arena that they could vote on. But I mean, considering the current state of affairs, that seems very unlikely.
So is DC officially back in the game in terms of these sports arenas?
Officially, I guess nothing is dead until it's dead. Over the weekend, the Speaker of the House, Don Scott, was quoted in the Washington Post saying, "This is politics. Things happen. This story's not over yet." I would say mostly dead. The imagining a path to victory is very difficult, I would say. However, it's not over till it's over.
Do you have any sense of how Ted Leonsis might feel about the $500 million deal that Bowser says is on the table? Do you have any sense of that?
I don't, but I will say it was probably a strategic mistake for him to wait so long to have a discussion with Eloise Lucas, right? So, here is this very powerful member of the Senate who is chairwoman of the Senate Finance Committee, and he waited until the last possible moment to have a meeting with her, have a discussion with her. She says she felt like she was invisible. That's really bad strategy. I mean, all along, the advocates for this arena have engaged in some really whoppers of strategic mistakes, and not meeting with Chairwoman Eloise Lucas top among them.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to have seen those memes about it now, like the Game of Thrones memes. Like, I do think it was probably a bad look to wait so long, and I can understand why she's feeling like, I don't feel like I've had a voice in this process. So, like, this is how I'm going to react.
And also you mentioned you saw all the memes on this. One of the really interesting things that happened right at the end of the session was the day it became apparent that the Senate had killed the possibility that funding for the arena would be in the General Assembly version of the budget. The governor called a press conference, and he's standing outside of the Senate chamber, like outside of the building, so you can see the Senate chamber physically behind him. I think perhaps the governor's communications people didn't quite expect what might happen, because from that angle, you can also look up at one side and see the Senate chamber. And if you're looking in the other direction, you see the portico of the Virginia Capitol, which is this, the platform and the stairs leading up to it. So there's Chairwoman Eloise Lucas standing way above the governor, looking down on the governor as he's giving this melancholy press conference where he's crestfallen that this is not in the budget and the Senate is making a mistake. The governor is saying, as Chairwoman Lucas is looking down on him from the portico of the Capitol. So, one of those own goals, I think you could call it, unintended consequences of calling this press conference, something they hadn't really thought through, that Eloise Lucas might be looking down on the governor as he's delivering this press conference.
Michael, I feel like nobody is more informed about this than you. Thank you so much for being here and explaining this all to us.
Thank you. It was great to be here.
That's all for today here on CityCast DC. If you enjoyed the show, share it with a friend who was so sure this deal was going to go through. You can rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our morning newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with even more news from around the city. Talk to you then. Now that it seems unlikely, I finally feel comfortable saying that I never thought it was going to go through. And I say that to say, like, I want to be able to say I knew it if it doesn't actually happen.
I'm writing this in my notebook right now. Bridget on the record, predicting failure.